Hello everyone, welcome back. I'm Lori Williams, and today we're outside in my garden because it's just too beautiful of a day to be stuck in the office. It's one good thing about working from home. I can work outside too. Anyway, today I want to talk about emotional awareness. This is part 2 of my 3-part series on self-awareness, and I'm breaking it down into physical awareness, emotional awareness, and then tomorrow will be mental awareness. So the 3 of them together make the overall self-awareness. So ultimately, when I talk about emotional awareness, what I'm talking about is being aware of the things that trigger you, the things that make you feel uncomfortable, that cause an emotional reaction. Keep in mind things like anger, things like, fight or flight, the fear-based responses. They're still emotions. And although, we're kind of taught in our society that those emotions are frowned upon, the truth of it is they are just messengers, the same as happiness and joy. As far as I'm concerned, the emotions that you feel don't really have any power over you until you give them power. So to have emotional awareness, you want to be able to recognize, like I said, I'm going to just use triggered as an example. If you're triggered, it's perfectly fine to, let somebody know that you've been triggered. But the truth of it is it's not anybody else's fault. It's not your fault either. But fault isn't the right word. Responsibility, that's the word I want to look for. It's not anyone else's responsibility. The truth of it is 100% your responsibility to heal the core of the trigger. I don't believe that anyone should ever have to live with the triggers they have. Absolutely not. Like, the triggers, again, they're just, that's emotional awareness. If you are able to understand that, hey, I'm in this situation, this triggers me, then that's an emotional awareness. Now, the question is what are you going to do about it? How are you going to heal it? What is that next step into healing it? And the next step into healing it, obviously, would be to look at the root cause of what's causing it. If it's a trauma, obviously the trauma needs to be healed. But sometimes, even after we've healed traumas, we still have like core beliefs or patterns around the traumas that need to be healed as well. And even having those can be triggering. So usually what I tell my clients, if you believe that the core of your trigger is caused from like a pattern, for an example, you can choose a different way. You can choose to be more responsive rather than reactive. And this takes time. And I like to use, when I was healing myself of anxiety is an emotional awareness thing. And like my first few signs of anxiety were my palms would get really sweaty and my heart would start to palpitate. And once I noticed those first few things, those first few emotional signs, I knew, okay, it's going to cause an emotional reaction. Even after I healed the cause of what caused my anxiety, the core of what caused my anxiety, I was still looking at the pattern because my body had, that physical response, but there was also like emotions that were tied to it as well. Usually, the emotion was a fear-based, because it was every time before I had healed myself, every time that I'd have a panic attack. I mean, I've had my panic attacks land me in the hospital numerous times. And every time I'd have a panic attack, I always had this fear of like losing control. There was like a fear of, someone harming me or something harming me, even if I didn't have any logical explanation as to what the core of the harm was. But that was how my body would continue to respond, right? And the emotions came up with that. The emotions of like still having that fear-based, like, oh my god, like something's gonna come out and attack me. A lot of the times it was just stuff in my head, which I mean isn't at all. And we'll get into this more when I talk about the mental awareness tomorrow. But like, I was so in my head about things that, I mean, I was very uncomfortable with people walking behind me, and I've shared the story before. I always had a problem, like if I was out, like just even walking down the sidewalk with people walking behind me, I always had an issue with that because in my mind it was like, you know, what are they going to do to me? I always overthought the situation of, you know, there's a million and one different things that they're going to do something, like there's a million different things that they could do to me, and I wouldn't even see it coming. But the truth of it is, nothing ever happened. Everything was perfectly fine. So that's where like the mental awareness obviously comes in. But we'll get into that more tomorrow. So understanding the emotions that are attached to it, and that when I was in that state of trying to heal the emotional aspect of my anxiety, I was like, okay, you know, rather than being afraid, I need to look at the fact that right now in this moment I'm perfectly safe. And right now in this moment, I am 100% in my own power. There's no one trying to overpower me. Power is mine. And eventually over time I was able to stop having that emotional reaction, that emotional the reaction that I didn't want to have. And now, I use like I said, I've told this before that I still get like my heart palpitations once in a while. But what I've actually realized is that it's usually a message to me that I'm not in the right space. I'm not with the right people. If I feel uncomfortable, my heart starts to palpitate. Typically, I'm just around the wrong people, you know, and it really can be that simple. So I use that as a messenger, and then I act accordingly. You know, find a exit strategy pretty damn quick. But ultimately, when it comes to emotional awareness, we have the power to be able to choose what we want to feel, and it doesn't always have to be based on what we used to feel. So just because we've always felt anxious, or just because we always felt fear, just because we always felt like we needed to get out of that space, it doesn't mean that we always have to feel like that. We can feel safe. We can learn to trust ourselves. We can learn to trust that even if something were to happen, we are strong enough and we are capable enough to take care of ourselves. In, you know, obviously in extenuating circumstances that doesn't necessarily apply, but for the most part, when it comes to calming yourself, a lot of it is just the fact that you don't believe that you are capable of taking care of yourself. You don't believe in yourself and your abilities to take care of yourself. And I think that's a really good reminder too, if you start to have those knee-jerk reactions, emotional reactions, to realize of like, okay, you know what? I don't live there anymore. That's my past is no longer who I am. Especially if you've done a lot of healing, you've come so far, and you have to recognize that you're not the person that you used to be, and you're not the person that needs to react in the same way. You can learn to respond rather than react. And it's never about doing this for other people. It's always for doing this for yourself, because the truth of it is carrying the emotional heaviness of like some of our reactions they're heavy to carry. Anger is heavy to carry. Fear is so heavy to carry. So choosing a different way, like I said, I never ever encourage bypassing of any sort. So emotional bypassing, no. You got to feel your shit. You got to deal with it. You got to get to the root of it. But on the pretense that you've healed the core issue and that this is just patterns and things coming up, then choose something different. Choose what feels better for you. And it really can be that simple. I didn't say it's easy, it's simple. The concept is simple. It's a matter of bringing your emotional awareness into nothing is good or bad. Nothing is good or bad unless you give it that label. And you're fully in your own power to be able to give it that label. And I want you to remember that next time that you have an emotional reaction, you can change this. You can change it from a reaction to a response. You can change from being triggered to not being triggered. Unfortunately, one thing that I see a lot is so many people like, oh, that triggers me. I'm like, okay, I'm sorry that it triggers you. I'm sorry that you're going through whatever it is that you're going through that caused this trigger. But, I mean, the truth of it is, what am I supposed to do about it? You know, like, we can't go out and walk on eggshells. Kindness, compassion, 100%, totally, like, we need those in this world. But I mean, I don't think being triggered should ever be an excuse. It should be an excuse to work on yourself and to do the healing that you need to do, but not the excuse for other people to have to walk around on eggshells around you. That's not the answer for anyone. If you stop and think about all the people that you know, if every single one of them had, say, even 3 triggers, and you had to try to remember them, honestly, I don't think I would ever people ever again. It's just like, you guys are too high maintenance. But yeah, I mean, my oldest is going through some emotional healing, and there's different things that have been triggering them. And I told him, like, let me know what the triggers are so I can be aware of them as well. And it doesn't mean that I'm going to necessarily not trigger them. I'm not going to do it intentionally. But I can help to support as they're going through the healing process. But they're still going through the healing process, which, I mean, I think honestly everything everyone should. I made a post yesterday about, healing is hard, but so is carrying all the trauma, all the pain. That's hard. That's harder. And you get to choose your hard. The thing is if you're still carrying trauma, by next week you're still going to be carrying that trauma. If you start to heal today, you're going to see signs of that trauma, the weight of that trauma lessening, in a week. You get to choose your hard. But anyway, so that is the video for today. Tomorrow we're going to be talking about mental awareness, and I'm doing this in 3-part sections because it's a little bit easier to be able to talk about, and it's a little bit easier to be able to do. Like, you don't have to do the physical, mental, and emotional awareness all at one time. If you can even just learn the physical part, give yourself, like, say 30 days or whatever it is you need to learn the physical part, how your body physically reacts, really become in tune with that, and then, move on to the mental or the physical, or the mental or the emotional. It doesn't have to all be done at one time. You can take steps to doing it, and that's why I'm giving it to you in steps, because if that's how you choose to do it, so that's a little bit easier for you, it's a little bit more manageable, because learning awareness when you've never had awareness before, learning awareness can be very tricky in itself. I know when I was first learning to be more self-aware, I would forget. I'd be like, what the hell am I supposed to be doing? I would forget everything. ADHD brain is like, you tell me, okay, it's gone, like 30 seconds later. So I was like, I had to break it down into bite-sized pieces, and that's why I wanted to share it with you in 3 parts. But that is it for today. I'll see you guys back here next time. Until then, take care. Bye for now.